Hello, everyone. My name is Gretchen Sugart, and I'm Executive Director of Theater Forward. We're so happy to welcome you today as Theater Forward shines the light on Center Theater Group, one of our nation's leading nonprofit theaters located in beautiful downtown Los Angeles. By way of background, Theater Forward is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to advance American theaters and their communities. We provide financial support and services to 19 of our nation's most prominent theaters, reaching coast to coast and including the highly acclaimed Center Theater Group. Theater Forward has been a proud supporter of Center Theater Group for over 40 years. We believe that theater is part of the cultural fabric of our society and has the power to educate and inform, provoke ideas, create jobs, drive local economies, and most importantly, soothe and feed our souls. That is why we fundraise and support theater across our nation in good times and especially in challenging times like these. If you'd like to know more about Theater Forward, its member cohort, and programs, please visit our website, theaterforward.org. A few housekeeping things as we get started. The event is being recorded and will be available to view tomorrow. There will be a Q&A with the guest artists during the presentation, so please submit your questions in the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen during that time. And now, let's turn our attention to the star of today's event, Center Theater Group. We'll start with a brief video, and then we'll meet CTG's highly effective Director of Institutional Advancement, Theater Forward board member, and my friend, Yvonne Bell.
Your beginner's course Act 1.
My heart breaks every time I watch that video and remember life at Center Theater Group before our 3 theaters closed on March 12th. We shot that footage on February 20th of this year and created the video to help us solicit donations at the beginning of this international crisis. Thank you. Thank you to all of you for giving to CTG. And thank you to Theater Forward for being such a strong supporter of regional theaters across the country. This has been such a critical time for us from so many different perspectives: health and safety, financial, the social unrest in this country, and of course, the inability to gather as a community and attend theater together. A little more than a year ago, Center Theater Group welcomed a new managing director and CEO, and I am pleased to introduce Meghan Pressman, who came from Woolly Mammoth Theater Company in DC and has worked at theaters across the nation, including Signature Theater in New York and Berkeley Rep. No leadership transition is easy, but in less than 9 months after arriving, she was confronted with this pandemic. Welcome, Meghan.
Hi, thank you, Yvonne, and thank you, Theater Forward and your board and all of your supporters who are with us today, and for all that you have given over the many years to Center Theater Group and your other 18 member regional theaters. It's just an amazing amount of work that you do in helping lift up the national theater across the country. I'm also so happy to welcome so many Center Theater Group board members and supporters who have joined us today. Thank you for being here with us.
Well, Meghan, in your first 9 months, you had moved to a new city, taken the reins of a $57 million organization, gotten newly married, and became a stepmother. Now, I know one of the many reasons the board hired you is because you are ambitious and fearless. Thank God. Talk to us a bit about why you took this job and your biggest challenges during this time.
Thank you, Yvonne. What a setup and a wonderful and horrifying reminder of the last 9 months. I got a little shaky just hearing the recap, but it's been both a tremendous and a really extraordinary time. Let me go back to your question about how I find myself here. You asked me to share a little bit about myself, and that context might help. So let me start, go way back just briefly. I grew up in a theater family. As a matter of fact, I grew up in Manhattan. My mom was a professional actress and then became a drama teacher in Brooklyn for many years. She's watching now. Hi, Mom. And my dad was a doctor whose patients included Broadway, film, actors, directors, other artists. So I definitely grew up in and around the theater and art form. Lots of stories over the years at the dinner table about how great and how difficult it is to work in theater. So it's always been a passion of mine. And at some point I figured out that where I was really passionate was that I am suited for was in the support of artists, how to be behind the scenes or in front of the camera sometimes, but really about setting up artists to do their best work for our community. So I eventually ended up going to the Yale School of Drama and got my master's in theater management and also an MBA from the Yale School of Management while I was there. And it was all with the whole point of running a major American theater company to make art and great art for our audiences in the United States and beyond. So a couple of years ago, when I was approached about this position at Center Theater Group, I couldn't say no. It was a dream job. It still is, even in 2020. And that's because of Center Theater Group and its legacy and all of the tremendous work that it has done, is doing, and will continue to do. I really believe in this company. And it has a stellar reputation from day one, really rooted in its founding. Gordon Davidson is a legend in our field, regional theater movement, and he was one of the great founders of this current iteration of the companies we have in our universe. And CTG has won almost 50 Tony Awards over its lifetime, has been supported works that have gone on to 4 Pulitzer Prizes, And we premiered almost 150 shows over the course of our little over 50 years. So of course, we've all known about it for many years, but being in the middle of it, knowing how complex and how interesting this work is, has been just a dream. So when I started last July, I had a lot of work to do to get to know every nuance of the company. So I started with my priority, which was learning the staff and connecting with them and understanding the ins and outs of everything we were doing, to get to know our board and to meet our generous circle of donors. And I spent a really hefty 6 months doing that. That ended just shortly before I got married. And then just after I got married, there was a pandemic. So I was really fortunate. I mean, I'm not saying that flip, to be able to meet all of the important people who made this company run before we had to really understand what was important to Center Theater Group in this survival mode that we're in. So, it's different in every city. Los Angeles is an incredibly complex and interesting town. And I am grateful that I had the time that I did. And that I could be here for CTG during this incredibly important moment in our life, and to help support the vision of artistic director Michael Ritchie, who will join us in a bit and talk a bit more with me about what we're thinking is up ahead. But of course, we didn't anticipate this situation that we're in with COVID.
Well, we're very fortunate and thankful that you're here as well, Meghan. If there's anyone that can pull us through this, I firmly believe it's you and the team that you've assembled. The pandemic has had a huge impact on the company, and we've moved from a $57 million organization all the way down to a $15 million organization. With this seismic shift, there have also been new opportunities for the company. And I am a person that the glass is half full. But these new opportunities have not only been for the company, but they've also been, I think, for theater in general. Talk to us a bit about the unexpected surprises that we've seen.
I would love to. It's nice to have a conversation for a moment about the positive findings that we have at this time. And Yvonne, if you're anything, you're a glass is 3/4 half full kind of person, 3/4 full. And I so appreciate that about you, because right now we have to meet this moment that we're in with feelings of abundance and support and generosity, because this is a time where we have to be here for everyone and be creative about how we respond to the time, how we support our artists and our audiences in new and unexpected ways. So one of the biggest ways, of course, is trying to figure out how theater exists in this environment. Michael will talk a little bit more about some of the artists we're working with to redefine that. But the biggest definition of theater is live performing arts on a stage, however you kind of form that stage. And we can't do that right now. But we can do it because we have a digital stage. So this is what we're looking at. We're looking at right now how we've launched our 4th theater. And I think that's here to stay. I really do. I think we're learning so much about how to be present in people's homes and in their lives. And that is certainly focusing on uplifting the experiences of our Los Angeles community. But it really allows us to think broadly about people who need art in their lives. And I'm excited about what this might mean for our future. So, in an immediate sense, some of the things that we've done really immediately have had a huge impact on some of our members of the community. While the digital stage just launched formally, we've been doing this with our education programs since, frankly, late March. And that group, and it's an amazing group of artisans and teachers that we work with, and they were able to pivot so effectively and quickly to meet the new environment. And the best example we have of that from like day one was back in late March, and then we had another one in April. We had college and career fairs. And these typically, we have college and universities that we partner with to help host them. They're very high touch, interactive things for students, and they usually can serve about 200 students at each event. Because we were able to pivot within a week's notice for the first one to move it online, we actually were able to serve over the 2 of them, 1,800 students and families, which is an amazing, I don't want to make it sound easy. I think the group is still recovering from that process. But what we did learn was that there's a way in which we can really serve our audience and support their lives right now through other means. And that team has been ahead of the curve every time, trying to figure out how to are working in summer series, our fall workshops, how to do ambassadorships, all of the things that we regularly do, down to student matinees, which we have coming up. And then we still are able to commit to one of our favorite programs, which is the August Wilson Monologue competition, which I think you're going to take us a little deeper into, Yvonne.
Why, Meghan, thank you for that great segue.
You're welcome.
This season, we celebrate our 10th year hosting the August Wilson Monologue competition. It's the centerpiece of our education programs and truly one of my favorite programs. With us today, we have Andy Chapman, a director, actor, teaching artist, mentor to so many of these young people, and what I'm calling our spiritual leader of this program. Andy, please take it from here.
Hi, Yvonne. How are you? Hi, Megan. 10 years. I can't believe that we are here. It starts with the brilliance of August Wilson, through preliminaries, through semifinals, through finals. And with his brilliance, these wonderful young people who come wanting to hear their voices heard. And that's the first thing that I talk to them about. I ask them why they chose the monologue in the first place. And August wrote about people who were in his neighborhood, simple people, but were extraordinary in their nature. And these wonderful students come to us with these stories that speak to them. And the thing I ask them is, why did you choose it? And they say they chose it because it spoke to them somehow. And so these little 16, 17, 18-year-olds lend their voices as they are within the story of August Wilson's plays, and they speak their truth. And I have been impacted by, I don't know how many there've been, quite a bit of them, but just the extraordinary nature of them courageously and wonderfully using their voice. And you can't ask for anything more. And understanding that their voice matters in the world. And just as August elevated and amplified the voices in his neighborhood, so these kids are riding that wave. And there's power in that, there's confidence in that, there's truth in that. And it's been an extraordinary ride. Let's see what else I want to cover. Oh, yeah. And that the key is the heart and the soul of it. And so we have one student out of a myriad of them, they're all wonderful, that's taken different avenues. And what I love about it as mostly is that they don't necessarily have to just be actors, but it talks about what we teach them in terms of ensemble and empathy, that they're looking out and rooting for each other, that they can be that just in being human beings in the world and in their artistry. And so that takes me to Daniel, who did the program for 2 years, lovely young man. In his last year, he was a finalist, top 3. And he wanted to go to Juilliard, he wanted to go to NYU, all of the big schools. And he was doing his monologue. He got called back to Juilliard, which is extraordinary. And then he hurt himself doing hairspray in his school. And so things went on. He was disappointed he couldn't go. So he goes to NYU. And then a year later, which is this year, he decides to persevere and wanting to bring August to Juilliard, which is wonderful, and decided that he was going to audition again. So we write the recommendation for him, and he gets into Juilliard, and he is there, and there are students all over the country in all of these drama schools, all from the August Wilson program. So it's my pleasure to introduce Daniel as a wonderful talent, but also, as all of the kids are, he's a wonderful human being. And the one thing that I'm really happy about is that all of them are still in touch with one another, and that is the spirit of ensemble, the spirit of togetherness, and our future is in great hands. So here we are with Mr. Daniel Velez. I don't know which, I think it's the Levy Monologue, and let's check it out.
Levy got to be Levy. And you don't need nobody messing with him about the white man, because you don't know nothing about me. You don't know nothing about Levy. You don't know what kind of blood I got, what kind of heart I got beating here. I was 8 years old when I watched a gang of white men come into my daddy's house and have to do with my mama any way they wanted. We was living out in Jefferson County, about 80 miles outside of Natchez. My daddy's name was Memphis. Memphis Lee Green. Had him near 50 acres of good farming land. Now I'm talking about good land. Grow anything you want. And it was coming on planting time. My daddy went in Natchez to get him some seed and fertilizer. He called me. He said, Levy, you the man of the house now. Take care of your mama while I'm gone. I wasn't but a little boy, 8 years old. My mama was frying up some chicken when the men's come into that house. Must have been 8 or 9 of them. She's standing there frying that chicken, and they come and took hold of her like you take hold of a mule and make him do what you want. I didn't know what they was doing to her. But I figured whatever it was, they may as well do to me too. My daddy had a knife that he kept around there for hunting and working and whatnot. I knew where he kept it and I went and got it. I'm gonna show you how spooked up I was by the white man. I tried my damnedest to cut one of them's throat. Hit him on the shoulder with it. He reached back, grabbed hold of that knife, whacked me across the chest with it. That's what made them stop. They were scared that I was gonna bleed to death. My daddy come back. Acted like he done accept the facts of what happened, but he got the names of their mens from mama. Figured out who they was. And announced we was moving out of the county. My daddy went and smiled in the face of one of them crackers, smiled in his face, and sold them our land. He got us settled in, and then he took off one day. I hadn't seen him since. He sneaked back, hiding up in the woods lane to get them 8 or 9 men. My daddy wasn't spooked up by the white man, no sir. That taught me how to handle him. I had seen my daddy grin in this cracker's face, smile in his face, and sell him our land. Oh, well, he's planning how he's gonna get him and what he's gonna do to him. That taught me how to handle him. So you all just back up and leave Levy alone about the white man. I can smile and say yes, sir, to whoever I please. I got my time coming to me. You all just leave Levy alone about the white man. Thank you.
Wow. So powerful. And thank you, Daniel, for your amazing performance and for your willingness to share that with us and with our group today. And Andy, for all of the work that you do with us. It is, we are so grateful to be able to work with you. The August Wilson program is so important to our education and community partnerships work. And we're glad to be able to highlight it for all of you today. And I also am so glad to be able to say, we can see how it might be possible that even in this crazy year, we're going to be able to still share out the art of these amazing young folks as we think about how to stay digital and virtual, but also really present. I still feel the real power of those words, even in this environment. Shifting to our artistic work, I know a lot of you are wondering about what's going on with Center Theater Group season and are here hoping for some more updates and information, what's going on in the wake of a pandemic, how we're supporting artists during this time, what's going on with the digital stage. So I am so thrilled to invite to join me Artistic Director Michael Ritchie. Michael, come on in.
Here I am.
Hello.
All right, good to see everybody.
Michael, so, we received some comments with RSVPs asking to speak about our season. We mentioned the digital stage, which we've been shifting to create over the past few months, which is a digital platform for our audiences. It's theater in your homes. It's both stuff that we're creating fresh as well as distributing from our partners and from our archives. So obviously the road to reopening and what we would consider more normal theater is complicated. And, while we figure that out, we're putting safety first, safety of our artists, safety of our audiences. And a lot of it is dependent on local government, the unions, all of the things that are going to control the environment we're in. But as we think about all of those pieces, Michael, what should we share with the group about our season planning going on for 2021 and beyond?
Sure. Well, I had scrolled through the participant list right as I came on and saw obviously a lot of names that I know and that we know, but also more than a handful of people that I didn't recognize. So for those of you who are on this call right now who don't have an immediate relationship with Center Theater Group, let me start off by saying we have 3 theaters. The Amundsen Theater is a 2,000 seat house. We both produce there and we present as well. We present touring Broadway musicals, plays. We have relationships with theaters like the National Theatre in London, where we'll do co-productions. We also have the Mark Taper Forum, 750 seat theater, and then the Kirk Douglas Theater, which is a 300 seat theater. So when the pandemic hit, we were about 3/4 of the way through last season. And like most theaters, we run pretty much from September into the summer. So all 3 theaters were up and running, had shows, had other shows behind those shows that were running to fill out the season. But we had also planned the upcoming season, the season we will be in right now at all 3 theaters. So when we shut down, we ended up obviously canceling or postponing the shows that we had running, but we had about 20 shows on our calendar, some of which had been announced and some of which hadn't. So the first order of business for us is to look to those shows and to try to see how and when we can bring them back into our theaters. And that's going to be a big juggling act. Looking at the season we had at the Amundsen, we had 1776 in the season. We had the Lehman Brothers trilogy for the coming season. To Kill a Mockingbird, Hadestown. We had some big shows, and every single theater, every single touring show is waiting for a moment when we can reschedule. The complication is we all have to reschedule at the same time with the same shows and the same people. So there's going to be a massive juggling act that's going to happen sometime, I think, probably late spring as we get towards the summer and the fall, when we all come together and try to figure out our calendars. So our intent is to bring all 20 of those shows back. We don't know in what order, nor do we necessarily know when exactly we'll start. We do know that we are capable of starting as soon as possible and as safely as possible. When those 2 things come together, we'll be able to announce what we're doing and in what order and start up again. Having said that, we also have dozens of shows that are under commission or in development for us right now for the upcoming seasons. So once we get back up to speed, and it may take us a while to actually get fully back up to speed, we'll be in good shape and able to move forward, providing we have the support, the audiences, people are willing and able to come out, the artists are safe, but we've put a lot of work into preparing for coming back into the theaters. Now, having said that, we're not back in the theaters. So what do we do in the interim? As Meghan had said, we've created a virtual season, which again follows pretty much the calendar of the normal seasons that theaters would have, from the fall through the spring and into the summer. We are both going into our archives, partnering with other theaters, and creating our own content that we will present online in different ways of presenting it, and trying to add value to whatever we present so that we have the kind of immediacy that you have inside a theater. So whether or not we're showing an HD video of one of Matthew Bourne's classic ballet productions, or we're doing a live reading of a new play at the Kirk Douglas Theater, the added value for us is gathering our audience somehow and having something additive, some conversation, some artist presentation, some background, some conversation amongst the cast and the audience as well, so that we can maintain some of that connection that we feel when we go into the theaters. So in order to do that, one of the things we did was we pulled together a collective of artists, 12 artists, almost all of them LA artists, and from a wide range of backgrounds. Solo performance artists, playwrights, auteur directors, shadow puppeteers, a small improv group to help us create this content. And they're coming up with a wide variety of productions and programs that we want to present. They go from 2-minute snippets to full plays, as realized as we can make them in this space. So it's actually been incredibly creative for the past few months for a lot of us who are used to doing things one way, to having to find the avenues in which we can still maintain our theatricality, but within a completely different framework that we're all living within right now. So it's been exciting, and I think we'll see a lot of interesting things come out of it. And I will also say that it's my belief, and it's actually my determination as well, that we don't lose this when we get back into the theaters. It will be wonderful for CTG to have what we would call our fourth stage, and to be able to reach beyond the driving distance of downtown LA, or the accessibility, and create a wider audience with it. So we're learning a lot, and I think we'll see a lot that will come out of it.
That's a great overview, Michael. Thank you. I know we're going to shift to some guests who are joining us, but before we do, I want to ask you, I actually haven't asked you this, what's one of the pieces you're most excited about that's coming up this fall or winter?
Now, I will say with the Creative Collective, they came up with an idea. The 12 of them, we engaged them as individuals, and then also asked them to be a brain trust for us about how we move into this space and out of it as well. And we're looking to each of those artists to create something for us, and maybe a little bit of collaboration. But when we first started talking to them, which was the day my heart lifted, which I think it was in June, when finally the artistic team was in a room with a group of artists, and they just started taking off. They had an idea about exploring Los Angeles, both individually and collectively, and they're talking about an artery project, which is still being built. But the idea is that Los Angeles is built on arteries, the artery of the river, the highways, the streets, the neighborhoods, what connects us. And the desire is to go out there and explore those neighborhoods as artists. They may be the neighborhood they live in. Also to utilize a group of younger artists to help interpret it, and also use the people that live in those neighborhoods themselves to tell their stories. And what are those stories? It may be historical. It may go back to when the land was held by indigenous people, and how do we move forward from there? It may go from where were the movie studios set up, and how did that structure the neighborhoods? Why is Beverly Hills Beverly Hills? Why is Studio City Studio City? To find where the culture lives, where the politics live, how the people move in and out of them. Boyle Heights, which is a huge Latino neighborhood. On many of the homes there, you find mezuzahs on the doors, because it was a huge Jewish neighborhood, and they still remain. So there are a lot of interesting little things that will be discovered, and then ultimately I think will be these tiny little pieces that will add up to a big piece of what LA is now and what it's becoming. And we've discussed that this is a project that doesn't have to end. This is something that can go on with new artists, new neighborhoods, basically mapping LA from different perspectives. So that one excites me more than anything.
Oh, I love that. And I love that it doesn't end and it can have in-person ramifications later. I love that it's, it's not foreign to us, the idea of a concept that kind of takes on its own life and evolves beyond our wildest dreams, which is very relevant to our guest today. Do you like that?
That was good. Talking of segues.
Speaking of segues, we're on it today because we have two artists, two of the best in the business, who we're so excited to have here with us because, wow, people who dream so big that you just have to figure out how to keep up with them. And I'm so grateful that we have them here. I'm gonna let Michael introduce them, but before I do, I'm gonna just remind the group that we will at the end of this have some brief time for Q&A, either for our guest artists or for me and Michael. Some of you have done that already. Somewhere on your screen, depending on the kind of device that you're on, you'll see a Q&A tab. If you type notes in there, that will get to us and I will help facilitate some questions at the end. So Michael, I'd pass it back to you for some intros.
Great, thank you. For everyone that's on this call, I'm sure if you're a lover of the theater, you certainly know David and Janine really well by their work. For me, they've both been friends and colleagues for many years. They've been friends and colleagues of Center Theater Group for many years. I recently had one of the greatest, I'll say this, one of the greatest pleasures of my career working with the two of them together on Soft Power, which we'll talk a little bit about when we get into our conversation. But I'd like to welcome in David Henry Wong and Janine Tesori. There you are, guys. Good to see you.
Hi.
Hey.
Sorry about that, but
It's quite all right.
I don't know. It seems
That's
very
quite all right.
pandemic perfect because it's like sunrise, sunset, sunrise, sunset. So there you go.
There you go. Are both of you in New York now?
Yeah, I think so. I'm in Brooklyn.
That counts.
Yeah.
I'm actually on Long Island. I moved out here for about 8 months to write an opera.
Pre-pandemic, or was that a planned move to write? Oh,
I seem to always write when I have that familiar feeling of terror from a deadline and when I cut off all of my social connections. So
there you go. There you
Yeah.
go. Well, it's actually, it was my first question was to be, and we've already started in on it. It's a completely different world that we're living. And we were just talking about how our theaters are not active right now. We're trying to create in a different world, in a different format. The two of you as both individual artists, a playwright and a composer, but also collaborators. Can you talk about what it's like right now in this environment, both in terms of the craft of doing what you do, but how this period of time is influencing what you do, influencing the art?
David, do you want me to go
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
first? You go.
No, you go.
First of all, I'm so thrilled to see, I love DHH more than anything. And I want to say that Soft Power for me was a real lesson, not of just how a great team is formed, but how to be produced well. And that is, David and I talk about that a lot because there are certain people who don't understand that producing is a form of parenting. And there's a time when you have to know when to flow in and flow out. And Michael Ritchie is just brilliant at that. And the risk that was taken and the ability to say, yes, we're going to do that. And I just want to say one of the things that has happened out of this is David and I received a letter through Sam Pinkelton from the entire freshman musical theater class of Manhattan School of Music. And they said, we understand that Soft Power isn't, we can't license it, but the entire class would like to sing Democracy from Soft Power, may we have the rights? And we, of course, said yes. But the entire class wrote a letter to us about this show. And that's when I think the things that phone calls like this about that geography is really a construct sometimes in your mind, that it's really a metaphor for the places that you isolate yourself politically, socially, psychologically, spiritually. And there are things to be discovered. I'm incredibly heartened by watching young people. I mean, if there was a dance step, the pivot step would be the step of 2020, which can also suck it. But there is this beautiful way that they are turning towards invention, and they are turning towards other ways of coping and being there for each other, of making work when, you know, I'm a writer, so I'm used to being isolated and crippled by self-doubt, but I'm not used to being joined by the entire world. So I find myself, I don't know about David, making generative work is very difficult. Editing work that has been done, or producing recordings or making schedules, I'm like, girl, I'm all over that. But really looking inside what I feel is a depletion is very hard right now, because I feel this sometimes paralyzing sadness for the world. And then there'll be this sort of pocket where the world feels like the Great British Bake Off. And I think, oh my God, the world can be so kind and so sweet, and you know, have interesting teeth, and so it's just lovely. So it's that, in a nutshell, is what I would say. And just cheers to all the young people and students all around the world.
Thank you, Janine. This is why she talks first. And I just want to confirm that Michael, you know, Janine and I and the whole creative team of Soft Power say very nice things about you behind your back. So, you know, we're just kind of reflecting that here. You know, in some sense, as a writer, I feel really fortunate in that I essentially create sitting at home by myself, and in this office in my house. And it's in some sense, I think I'm much more fortunate than, say, directors and actors who can't practice their craft, or it's very difficult for them to practice their craft, or they have to figure out new ways to do it in this moment. First of all, I can make a living because there's film and television work, but in terms of theater, there's part of me that appreciates this moment, as sad as it is and as tragic as it is, to kind of step back and think about just the pure writing of it. So, you know, we may talk about this a little later, but kind of what's the next iteration of Soft Power? And what do I want to do for, you know, for my next stage show, my next kind of personal work? And I'm particularly, it's weird, but, you know, because it's been so tumultuous and horrible. But I am kind of hopeful. I mean, I do tend to be kind of pathologically hopeful, so I may be wrong about that, but I feel like people have taken, and artists have taken advantage of this terrible situation to find a silver lining, to reinvestigate what it is that we do, and what do our institutions do, and what is the nature of theater. And before this, we were wonderfully all running around so quickly that we were trying to get our productions up, trying to get our rewrites done. We couldn't think about those bigger questions. And I'm interested about the degree to which we will come out of this, certainly much more conscious about the racial reckoning that our theater needs to face, but also the value of community, the way in which community is at the heart of theater. And we kind of, you know, those of us who are theater professionals, it's easy to make fun of community theater. And there's some brilliant examples like Waiting for Guffman. But I think what this moment is teaching me is that community is at the heart of theater, and the professionalization that has happened over the past 20 to 30 years has had many good aspects, but sometimes we've lost that sense of who it is that we serve and who can come into our theaters and who feels comfortable in our theaters and who are we writing for. So that's been a great thing for me to begin to think about.
I think that's terrific. The two of you are thinking that way, because it is something that getting off of the treadmill of productions, it was jarring at first. I mean, I think we've all gone decades without that being the motivating force or driving each day. And then there was, crisis management, and then what do we do now? One of the best things that has come out of this is that we were presented with a reckoning, and in some ways have the ability to address it without being distracted by doing the thing we love most, which is putting a show on. In this period of time, I think will change the theater drastically, and I still don't know fully how, but you've both talked about it, and it's going to be all of us that will be involved. It's every artist, it's every community, it's every single theater, a theater as large as ours that serves as diverse and large a community as ours. We have to rethink basically how we do things, why we do things, when we do things, and especially who we do them for. And I think we'll see that in structures. I think we'll see that in choices. I'm sure we're going to see it in the art as well. This period of time, we will see whether or not it's directly addressed. Indirectly, I think the theater will be influenced for the next decade minimum, just like after 9/11 caused a shift in perspective. Not necessarily the story, but why it was being told. So I think it's going to be fascinating for you and everyone else to do what you do in the coming years.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting combination of sort of reckoning with these issues. And also there's a part of me that feels like people are just going to want to have a good time too.
Yes. Well, that's true.
And I think about like the 1970s after the trauma of the 60s, or the 1920s after, the Spanish flu and World War I. And I think there's a way to that it can be both. And I think that would be incredibly exciting.
I agree. Now, I do want to talk about soft power, even though we mentioned it, briefly at the top, in part because, and I know I said this to you, at least at one point during our time together, which was 2 years of putting this show up, 2.5 years, whatever it was. I've been doing this for over 40 years, and although I have never become jaded, I've become used to doing what I do, either as a stage manager or then as a producer and artistic director, and my function in it. And a few years ago, I thought to myself, maybe I'll never fall in love again. That thing where your heart just opens up for a show or a company or a process, which happened for me, a dozen times, 10 times over the course of my career, where something came along that I just fell in love with. For multiple reasons, soft power, I fell in love with. I fell in love with it early on, before there was even anything to hold on to, in part because of the two of you and the rest of the creative team, even in the conversations about the possibilities. And this had an odd path towards production. It started with a cup of coffee with David and I, and just saying, let's do something for CTG's 50th anniversary. And from there, it took different iterations. So I just want to say that I am still madly in love with that show. Had a wonderful run with us in San Francisco and at the Public. Is there anything that that you can project, that you can tell us about a future for that show? What are your hopes?
You want me to speak for that first, Janine?
Yeah, you have to go first this time.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I can tell you is that we are working on it. We're continuing to work on the next iteration of the show, and that we have commercial producers who continue to be incredibly supportive. And we are interested in what the show is going to look like and what it's going to address post 2020. Like if if there is a God, we will be in a different political environment. And okay, nobody wants me to like jinx it by saying that, but anyway.
Don't say, okay, no more. No, I'm just saying like.
Oh, just not about that part. Okay.
Well, you have to say like when we did that workshop, that was.
Okay, so you want to tell that story?
You tell that story because
Okay.
I'm afraid to.
Okay, so Soft Power is a show that has really evolved and been written and rewritten to as events have been taking place. So the original version had a I don't know how many people on this call know the show, but it had a President Hillary Clinton, and we did a reading of that on Election Day in 2016. So, many of us have PTSD about the 2016 election, and I think that those of us who worked on Soft Power found it, have an extra reason to have PTSD, because the next morning I called Lee Silverman and said, well, I think this is going to be bad for the country, but it could be good for the show. And then in what I think is the bravest act of producing I've ever witnessed, Michael set up a phone call with Janine and Lee Silverman and I, and we assumed he was going to put off the show or, kind of politely cancel it. And instead, he decided to, because we were now a full musical, not a play, and with an orchestra, he decided to move us from the taper into the Amundsen. So that's the background of Soft Power in terms of the previous election. But post 2020, I think we're looking at, what is the U.S.-China relationship part of the show that we can highlight as opposed to the relitigation of the 2016 election part of the show.
Right, good.
Yeah.
I'm really glad to hear the work is continuing. And that was one of the great joys of it, that it kept reflecting and addressing and reacting to the moment we were in right up until the very last performance. So I think it's one of those shows that can continue in different or enhanced iterations as it moves on. I think I'm going to turn it over to Megan now. I think.
Yeah, I want to get in one big question before we answer a couple of questions from the crowd, although you've already hit on a couple of them with your Soft Power answers. People really want to know the more future for that show. So thank you for sharing that. Before we open it up, just because of the audience that this is, which is both a New York crowd, but also a regional theater crowd, you two have had such wide-ranging careers. You've worked at small companies, you've worked at regional theater companies, you've done Broadway. From your perspective, just in that, like a super brief headline kind of sense, could you touch on what your feeling is the role of regional theater in the United States? Why are theater companies like Center Theater Group or other Theater Forward members important to your career and to your work? I think it's just really helpful for us to frame from your perspective as leading artists how we fit into your ecosystem.
I'll start on that. I moved to New York in 1979, and I moved into I went to Columbia and moved to Harlem, and so I was there at a time where what David was describing, and I love New York City. I'm never leaving there. They're going to have to take me and bury me inside my piano. But New York is not America. New York is New York. And regional theaters make up of this place that Napoleon said was when we bought that land, when Thomas Jefferson bought all that land, he was like, good luck, because it's too big to govern, and sometimes it feels that way. But the regional theaters are America, And the idea, I've been really doing a lot of work on the state level government, and you really find out at the state level, not the federal level, the identity of all of these United States. And I think that is also for regional theaters. It is what you were saying, and I loved that video because it is a reflection of the community that it serves, it deserves, it organizes. And so every single regional theater is completely different, as it should be. When you get to, and I've done off-Broadway and Broadway shows, and David has had a really storied career and across all forms. But Broadway is its own element, and the financial part is really tricky. And so the idea of risk taking isn't what it used to be. And hopefully that's one of the templates that will change. That's what I really hope. But I think that if you really want to find out about a community, you go to that regional theater. It also is a training ground. There are like these teaching hospitals where you hear all of these young people. Oh, this is where I started. This is the first show I fill in the blank. So it is of its community. And I think the idea of community sometimes has this pejorative connotation, community college. Well, that college means it's part of the community. Like, why have we spit on community college? Community colleges should be wonderful places, and they should be free. So for me, that the national identity is at a state level.
I appreciate that. Thank you for that framing. And we do right now. We're in a really weird world where geography doesn't matter, but we still are really, really focused on who our community is and how we define that. And it's just interesting times. David, how about for you?
Yeah, I mean, everything Janine said. And for instance, even the project that Michael, you were describing, but from Creative Collective, I mean, I'm a native Angelino and I'm really curious about that stuff. So, and I don't think that that's a project that necessarily would have been commissioned out of New York or Philly or any place else. But even, going back to Broadway, which, as Janine says, is a very strange beast. I can't remember the last time I saw a play on Broadway that didn't come out of a regional theater, or for this, and primarily, most new musicals come out of a regional theater. So there is an important dual function in terms of the community, but also it's the regional theaters that create the national theater.
I appreciate that. So we have a couple of questions from the crowd I want to go to. One was a bit more, I think, to me and Michael, but I actually want to invite any of this group to answer it. With Broadway announcing that it will be shuttered until at least the end of May, the question was, how does this affect touring shows and CTG's season? But really, how does this affect your kind of point of view of theater in the months ahead, to any of the three of you?
Well, I can speak to the logistics, and partly what I was talking about early on is that we have a slate of shows that have been lined up into the future. And there were other shows that were opening on Broadway this season that we were looking at for the following season. I think there may be a drop in the terms of the touring shows in, say, 3 seasons because we've missed a full season. I'm not worried about winding back up into presenting shows to start off, but there may be a lull across the country. So we may take advantage of it and do more producing of our own if we don't have that many touring shows coming out that will give a fulfilling season to our patrons. So there may again be something that's beneficial that happens from this that's creative and local. Every show that goes out is creative, but we may produce more in the Amundsen than we have in the past.
Question that came in: can we economically show live theater at 25% capacity?
No. You answer that one.
I'm on it. This is a really great question. The answer is no, not anywhere. We actually don't, but we don't economically produce live theater now. We only produce live theater as subsidized by our community. So donors, supporters, board, foundations, government, all those folks is what it takes to show live theater. And theater is economically a losing proposition without the support from the community. So that's true. It's certainly more true if you're limiting your capacity. There are going to be a lot of places who think creatively where outdoor theater or new inventions of socially distant theater can be produced, but I doubt that many of them will be able to even break even without philanthropic support. So that's why kind of putting the attention on how dearly everyone needs your support right now, and for the government to support things is what will take for theater to come back. We can't actually in LA do anything yet with gatherings beyond like 10 people. And even that is very prescribed. So we can do outdoor shows later, but we don't know when. You can do stuff in your cars. There's all sorts of ways we're going to think creatively about it. But right now it's little bitty step by step. I think we're at the time where I'm going to hand it back to Theater Forward folks, but I do want to close with an artistic question. David and Janine or Michael, I love the idea of kind of bringing art to reflect on life at this time. Is there anything when you think back of the last few months in particular, is there a song or a scene from any of your shows that is particularly evocative to you of the moment that we're in? Something that you kind of think back on a lot? Was prescient, perhaps.
I think I've been thinking, and maybe Janine has also, about democracy a lot from Soft Power, and it has been now a song that has been used a lot and sung a lot in recent weeks by a variety of artists. And that is the moment that I think we're in.
I have to agree. I think that I think about Soft Power all the time because I thought that we were writing a show and I didn't understand the depth to which David's story was not only amplified, but was actually a reflection of something that, to decolonize your mind. As Gil Scott-Heron said, the revolution starts here. It's not going to be on TV. It's going to be inside your head. And I think it's in these coming times, you see the tributaries of how deep it is. And I think when we were writing Soft Power, there was a sense of, oh, get the drama right. And the idea is, well, look at the world and put it on stage. It's right there, unfortunately, for you. So I think nonstop about that show.
Appreciate that. And this is not and it was not an intentional plug, but you did record a cast recording that came out this past April of Soft Power, yeah. Right? So it was
the first listening party that we did, was the first time in New York.
Pandemic. Yeah. So that's out there if you're curious about it. I also have a kind of spoiler alert. We've been doing something at Center Theater Group over the past few months of scenes from the vault with select scenes or songs from shows that we produced. And we've been holding on to a Soft Power or a democracy release. And between now and the election, expect to see something from us in that category shared out. So just because it's come up so much, I want to make sure people know where they can hear more about this because it is so relevant to our lives. And with that, I want to say sincere thank you, Janine and David. It's so great to share space with you. Michael and I are so grateful for your willingness to ever do theater with us. The invitation is always open, but also to just talk about theater is such a nice relief.
Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow then.
I mean, we will call.
Oh, trust me. Trust me. There's a very short list. Trust me.
Thank you for this invitation.
Guys.
Thank you. Great seeing you.
And with that, I'm going to invite Carl from Theater Forward to come bring us home. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today.
Hello, thank you so much, Megan. Hi, everyone. What a wonderful afternoon this has been. My name is Carl Velez, and I am Theater Forward's Director of Development. On behalf of everyone at Theater Forward, thank you, Yvonne, Michael, Megan, David, Janine, Andy, Daniel, Antonio, and Tyler, and everyone at Center Theater Group for making today possible. I have some great news for all of you. This is the first in an ongoing series of spotlights on our member theaters, which we will be bringing to you virtually. So please sign up for future Spotlight series by clicking through the link available on the chat now. So, so now actually I can announce the upcoming programs. Next up on Wednesday, November 18th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. Pacific Time, the spotlight will be on the American Repertory Theater in Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is on the campus of Harvard University. This program will be led by the theater's Terry and Bradley Bloom artistic director, Tony Award winner, and a current Tony nominee for her work in the musical Jagged Little Pill, Diane Paulus. So please sign up for that. And then on Thursday, January 14th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. Pacific Time, we will turn our spotlight on Actors Theater of Louisville. It is the home of the world-famous Humana Festival of New American Plays, currently under the leadership of Executive Artistic Director Robert Barry Fleming. For more details about these programs and our work at Theater Forward, to financially support us and all our member theaters, and to sign up for upcoming events, please visit theaterforward.org. So until next time, please stay safe and goodbye.